Hello there, and welcome to the woods! When the first proper trailer for Pokémon Legends ZA released, we dropped everything to make an in-depth analysis of everything we could spot in the first day or so, because we figured if we were going to be obsessively combing for as much information as we could find anyways, why not collect it in a video so we could share our findings with other people? But before we could finish editing, both life and mental health got in our way, and so much time passed that there was no point in releasing an outdated analysis of that first trailer, especially because there's also a second one now. We didn't want to scrap our work though, so we decided we'd just make one comprehensive video going over all the information we've got so far, between both trailers and the official website. So, to start things off, let's travel back to February 27th to hear about everything our past selves found in the first trailer. We start off with this shot flying into what seems like a gate into the city, though it's not exactly the same as one of the gate buildings from X and Y. We know exactly where this is located, and whether or not this panning shot was constructed just for the trailer, we're pretty sure that this is pretty much exactly where you start the game. According to the website, this story begins with a sightseeing trip to Lumiose City, and they even helpfully show a screenshot of the reverse side of this building's inside, showing that it's a train station. Presumably, when the game starts, the player has just gotten off of the train here. Next, we see both of our protagonists, and they're pretty stylish, as expected. They both seem to be older characters, much like how the X and Y protagonists are said to be in their late teens. Interestingly, they show the girl first here, and this is actually pretty consistent. It almost seems like she's being treated as the default state of the player character, which is the opposite of usual. Would be pretty cool if so, I guess, though it doesn't really affect anything. They're both wearing Zygarde colors, which is a pretty neat detail. Interestingly, they are both already wearing Mega Keystones on their wrists, which is strange if these scenes are taking place at the beginning of the game. That's probably just a trailer thing, but we'll see, I guess. We've seen people saying that these two designs look like Ethan and Lyra from Heart Gold and Soul Silver, but we don't really see it. If anything, the guy looks uncannily like Sycamore, or a relative of Sycamore, whereas the girl looks sort of like the mom from X and Y. You don't have to read into this. Anyways, speaking of this being at the beginning of the game, we know exactly where these shots of the protagonists take place, and we'll be able to show you why in just a minute. This seems like the right time to introduce this gigantic overhead map of all of Lumiose City, which you can actually find at full resolution, a whopping 8,200 pixels wide or so, on Pokemon's press website. It's pretty funny to compare this to the original map of Lumiose City from way back in the X and Y days. Interestingly, it seems like in both cases your exploration of Lumiose City starts in the exact same spot, right here to the lower right. You can tell because of this building seen here behind the feminine protagonist design in this shot, which you can find on the map right here. This was the very gate that you originally entered Lumiose City from back in X and Y, although now it's been converted into a train station, so I guess the residents of the city can't access Route 4 anymore. Interestingly, the Legends AZ iteration of Lumiose is divided into these 5 colored districts, we'll call them, and the colors of these line up almost perfectly with the names of these 5 circular plazas that were originally in Lumiose City, although the red and the pink seem to have swapped for one reason or another. Also, yeah, to address the elephant in the room, this game is not taking place in the past, and it's not particularly futuristic either. This is just modern Lumiose. It's clear at this point that the Legends subseries just kind of does whatever it wants, and we can't use the previous game to predict exactly what kind of time period or aesthetics the next game is going to focus on. Moving on with the trailer, we can see the protagonist running down this street on the map with a newly added Pokemon Center that you can see right here. This shot also shows a newly added Pokemon Center, and it's located exactly here on the map. This interior shot is interesting, seeming to take place in some kind of indoor mall, which we're pretty sure we found on the map right here. Notably, the architecture and aesthetics are almost identical to this art in the same image as the map, although it's clearly not the same room, probably somewhere in the same sort of building complex. There's some interesting NPC designs that you can see in the background of this image, including one that we'll have to talk about later. Here's the entrance to what we'll soon learn is called Wild Zone 6, somewhere in the Green Roof Zone. It's a cute detail that these holographic pillars have the same statue design that was used all the way back in Gen 1. This shot of a group of Clauncher is located somewhere in the blue roof zone, around here-ish. Then we see Furfrou making its first appearance on the Nintendo Switch ever. This group of Sandile and Krokorok is found in Wild Zone 8, which is in some kind of circular area, but it doesn't seem to be one of the big plazas. We can't find exactly where on the map it is. And here we get the starter reveal, located in front of that building that we pointed out earlier, pretty much cementing it as the beginning of the game. There's an interesting color balance seen in this shot where Tepig looks weirdly red and the spikes on Totodile look weirdly pink. There's something odd about the game's lighting. So, obviously it's a bit surprising having 2 out of 3 of the starters be from Gen 2, but all we can do is trust the process, right? It's not like we can say what's a good or a bad choice right now, because we don't know how these 3 are going to evolve. They could get regional forms exactly like the Legends Arceus starters did. They could evolve into their normal final forms, but then get Mega Evolutions, or they could even get both for all we know. There is no pattern to make guesses by, because again, Legends clearly does whatever the hell it wants. We do have something else to examine, and that's the starter bios on the website. They don't actually reveal all that much, unsurprisingly, because these are the same 3 Pokémon that we already know. It is at least worth noting what aspects they choose to draw your attention to. Chikorita's gentleness and calming aromas, Tepig's gluttony and general food theming, and Totodile's, bitiness. These themes could all be central to whatever new forms they might get. Interestingly, they also put emphasis on Tepig's speed and agility, which the original evolution line didn't have all that much of. The food theme also feels more prominent than it ever really has been before, so Tepig feels like the one with the clearest signposts for how it might change. We're definitely most interested in this one of the 3, but we'll see what happens. At any rate, it doesn't feel like we have grounds to start guessing possible type combinations for any of them yet, although there is one hint for Chikorita that we'll talk about later when we get to it. So, moving on, we see the protagonist running away from Prism Tower around here on the map. We see the protagonist dining outside of the cafe with Totodile, which is a very cute idea. We'll have to see if you can actually do this in gameplay. And we see the protagonist and Chikorita having just entered Wild Zone 1. They encounter a Bunnelby, which they knock out in one hit and then catch, which is interesting. It seems like this game has a mechanic where you get a brief window of time where you can catch something after knocking it out before it disappears. We'll have to see how that works out in practice. Wild Zone 1 is pretty tiny, as you can see, and it is located exactly here on the map. In this shot, with the protagonist and Chikorita celebrating, you can see this green glow on rooftops in the background. At first we thought this was something we'll see in the very next shot, but no, it seems like this is just the borders of the Wild Zone, which are just kind of clipping up to the top of the rooftops, because the borders were assigned weirdly. Hopefully they'll sort that out by launch. It just looks a little odd. Well, there's that mechanic in the very next shot. We see the protagonist stepping on some kind of teleporter that takes them up to a rooftop. You can see a building in the background that places this shot somewhere around here on the map, although the rooftops don't really look pink, more brown. I guess that's subjective. You can see the protagonist traversing the rooftops by doing things like vaulting up to a higher level, and then, interestingly, running straight off the side of a rooftop and doing this animation where it looks like they're pulling out a Rotom phone to get sort of a double jump from it, kind of like that animation where your phone can save you if you fall from a high place in Scarlet and Violet. But notably, we can't actually see anything visually in the protagonist's hands during this animation. Next, we're introduced to this game's take on the rival tradition with Urbane and Tawny, which are very on-the-nose names, as I'm sure you know. Urban, Towny. Apparently Urbane is even just French for urban, despite also being a name, which is funny. Much like the protagonists of games, these two seem to essentially be one character treated as 2 characters just because they can have 2 different genders. Whichever one you get is always the opposite gender of the player character, and they also seem to always choose whichever starter is weak to yours. Now, this battle takes place exactly here on the map, just outside a building that we'll see in better detail very soon. As for battles themselves, we'll get a better chance to talk about the mechanics of those soon as well. We see a Pyroar attacking, amusingly right next to a statue of a Pyroar, somewhere in the city that we haven't been able to place just yet. Interestingly, the trainer dodge rolls out of the way of this attack, but it's hard to say if the mechanic of being able to take damage is still a thing from Legends Arceus. The dodge roll could just be a way to get your Pokémon to move out of the way quicker, it's hard to say. It's time for the introduction to Mega Evolution with that keystone that we talked about earlier. It's on some kind of round bracelet thing decorated with the DNA symbols that Mega Evolution is associated with. In the past, every trainer got a funny, unique name for whatever accessory they had their keystone on. Hard to say what this one's going to be. There's not too much to say about the Mega Showcase itself. Anybody could have guessed that they were going to bring back all of the Mega Evolutions that they made in the past. Hopefully they don't lock a bunch of them behind the post-game this time. The distribution of Mega Stones in X and Y was kind of like the distribution of new evolutions to old Pokemon in Diamond and Pearl, and Platinum fixed that issue, so hopefully this revisit to Kalos will fix that issue with Kalos. Also, as a side note, they all have this cool iridescent sort of look to them, which is very neat. We see Tawny asking for a fist bump from the player character on the rooftop of the building that we're about to see in a second. This is the very building that fight earlier took place outside of, and it's called Hotel Z. And again, it's located right here. It jumps to our introduction to another pair of characters. This is Jet, the CEO of Quasartico Incorporated, and her secretary, Vinny. Lots of people have already guessed that these two are suspicious, perhaps? It seems a little obvious, it's hard to say. Jet in particular does look suspicious, Vinny less so because of those cute hair decorations he has. We could see Jet being a subversion like Silene, whereas if she is evil, we could see Vinny still being good. It's hard to say. Notably, Vinny has very similar sideburns to Lysandra. The logo and general aesthetic of Quasartico reminds us of the Ether Foundation, which might or might not mean anything. The name seems to be based on quasar, which is an extremely luminous active galactic nucleus. Basically all you need to know is that it's a space thing that shoots off crazy amounts of energy. Rayquaza, or Rayquaza, was named after them for whatever reason. It goes back to showing that overgrown building with some nice, subtly Z-shaped window panes, which is a fun detail, and then reveals the owner, AZ. Yup, he's back. He's chill now. This is obviously a sequel, since he has Floette with him, and this clearly doesn't take place 3,000 years ago. The website doesn't really tell us anything new about these two, but it's nice to see them. One funny detail is that it uses she-her pronouns to talk about Floette, which is unusual. In the past, Pokemon games exclusively used it pronouns for every Pokemon in every situation, no matter what, and it's only very, very recently that started to change. This doesn't mean anything, it's just a funny detail to note. So the website reveals that Hotel Z... Hotel Z? The website reveals that Hotel Z will act as your home base for this game, and also that Urbane/Tawny lives and works there, supporting AZ however they can. Finally, we get one more panning shot up the exterior of Hotel Z before showing a 10% Zygarde chilling on a roof, staring out into space. You can see that building we pointed out earlier is clear on the other side of Lumiose from this perspective, which pretty much confirms that Hotel Z is exactly where we pointed to, and also shows off just how gigantic Lumiose City is going to be. Oh yeah, since it hasn't come up yet, that's the Quasartico headquarters, their logo's on the outside and everything. From here, it's the part with a voiceover that was also uploaded as a standalone video. A lot of the things that become obvious past this point are things that we've already talked about, so we should be able to take a faster pace through this. Here we see a trio of Ace trainers standing with the 3 original evolutions, and they've been redesigned, but we can tell that these are Kalos Ace trainers for sure. As you can see, this game is continuing the idea from Scarlet and Violet of letting generic trainers in the same trainer class have differing hair and skin colors and accessories and such. Here outside the Pokemon Center, which you can walk right in without a loading screen, which is cool, we can see this guy in blue that looks kind of like a delivery guy, and unfortunately an anti-homeless bench. The hologram outside the corner of the building is now showing a revive instead of a Pokeball like it did earlier. No, it's not a Z-Crystal. Then we see this wild-looking area that's plastered in the Quasartico logo. We think this is a construction site of some sort. Also, hey, there's Patrat. There's its first appearance on the Switch. We missed this thing. We see this guy having a holographic phone call with somebody, which is clearly some kind of upgrade over the Holocaster, and in the background, we can see that the Pokemon Center is now showing a potion on its little hologram thing. Clearly this is just a rotating advertisement for items that you can buy there. Not too much to say about all these shots of just different people and Pokemon around the city, but Garbodor is very cute when it sleeps. This Eevee is also cute, as usual, and these are some well-designed generic NPCs here. We can see that this is right next to the train station at the beginning of the game. Now this is interesting. With Prism Tower so close in the background and the circular shape, this is clearly one of the 5 big plazas near the center of Lumiose City. It seems to be this one in the red zone, and interestingly, in the background it looks like there's a stage set up. It's hard to say what that's going to be for. Again, there's not much new to talk about in these shots, but this cafe that they're running past right here seems to be here on the map, very close to the start. Wild Zone 2 here, we're pretty sure is in this plaza in the green zone. The player approaches and targets this fletchling, which has these 4 upwards yellow arrows next to it, which, based on later footage, we can say is almost definitely an indication of how easy it's going to be to catch. And now we get this short clip that tells us a lot. It's our first proper look at battling with the UI on screen and everything, and it takes place on a rooftop in Wild Zone 6, which appears to be around the border between the green zone and the blue zone. Taking things one at a time, these real-time battles seem to put your 4 attacks on the 4 face buttons of the Switch, which is a very good idea. It worked great in Xenoblade. This game even seems to use attack cooldowns just like Xenoblade does. As for the attacks themselves, Leafage and Disarming Voice are new for Chikorita, and Disarming Voice being a new move has people definitely suspecting that it might turn into a Grass Fairy type. Though, of course, Vanilla Meganium already kind of feels like it could have been a Grass Fairy type, so it's entirely possible that it could go in a completely different direction. And then at that point, Disarming Voice is just a random coverage move they decided to give it. They've done weirder things before. The 3 attacks all have this circle icon transparent above the type icon, whereas there is no icon over Leech Seed. At this point in the game, the trainer has Chikorita, Spupa, Fletchling, Bunnelby, Swablu, and Swirlix, all by around level 15, which are pretty reasonable times to find all of those Pokemon. And this shot confirms that you can actually catch Pokemon after depleting their HP to 0, as you can see Flaffy pretty clearly getting knocked out and then getting caught immediately afterwards. Notably, it's hard to say if the trainer was just button mashing to immediately throw a Pokeball, or if it was activated automatically. Either way, there's a prompt to cancel by hitting B. Also, here's the near confirmation of what the yellow arrows mean. As you can see, it goes from having 2 yellow arrows to 3 after being knocked out. And for one final detail, you can see that "You've been seen" warning from Legends Arceus is making a return there at the top of the screen. It's not too surprising that stealth elements would be a part of things again. Here with Totodile vs Tepig, this seems to be the first rival battle, but both Pokemon are at level 10, which is interesting. This is clearly going to be the first time you meet Urbane/Tawny, and also probably the first time you enter Hotel Z, so maybe you start the game at a higher level than usual, or maybe you just have more stuff to do before you get to this point. Once again, the attack moves have circle icons over them, whereas the super effective water gun has a circle icon with a dot in the middle of it. For an interesting detail here, the command to use Water Gun actually takes time to reach Totodile here, which seems to indicate that there will be a strategic reason to stay close to your Pokemon. In this clip with Lucario vs Spritzee, you can see that by the late 30s the trainer also has Diggersby, Pyroar, Kangaskhan, Aromatisse, and Roserade. Nothing here is really new or surprising for Kalos. We can consider it confirmed by this point that a circle with a dot inside means super effective, a triangle means not very effective, and an X means no effect. And Protect here being usable on the fly to interrupt attacks as they're coming makes it sound very viable even in singles, which is cool. For Hippowdon vs Talonflame here, the trainer also has Pidgeotto, Slurpuff, Skiddo, Flaffy, and Goomy by the late 30s. And this is interesting. Stealth Rock is not treated as an attack by the UI, which suggests that it is literally an actual hazard setting move like it's supposed to be in the main series, rather than a direct attack like it is in Arceus. But it's used proactively here to interrupt the flame wheel of a Talonflame that's already on the field. So that's very cool and definitely shows the variety of different move types that you can expect to see in this game. Also, that's nice, Talonflame isn't going to be stuck with no better fire moves than Ember until it gets Flare Blitz. Next, in this clip versus Pyroar, which amusingly takes place in the exact same spot as that earlier clip with Pyroar, we can see a display of switching Pokémon. The trainer here has Vivillon, Onix, Talonflame, Gogoat, Ampharos, and Florges by the mid-40s, and hopefully being able to evolve Onix doesn't come that late in the game. Our best guess is that in this game, you remove the move selection UI by pressing down on the D-pad, then use left and right on the D-pad to scroll over Pokémon, then D-pad up to switch to whatever you've selected. Also, yeah, as you can see, Onix is once again tiny. Unless Pokémon size variation is even more extreme in this game than it was in Legends Arceus or Scarlet and Violet, it seems like we're back to Pokémon sizes not being their canon sizes. Which, we suppose makes some sense with the more action-y gameplay. Here in this clip of Mega Absol vs Altaria, the trainer also has Raichu, Vivillon, Dragalge, Hippowdon, and Glaceon by the high 50s in levels. Interestingly, all 4 of Absol's moves look like they're upgraded with this circle with a plus icon. We have no before and after comparison to check if this is just a Mega Evolution thing or if there's some way to permanently upgrade your moves in this game. Also, you can see that Mega Evolution is time limited now with a gauge in the bottom right. Of course, we don't know yet whether this is going to recharge in between battles or not. Also, do you notice how instantly the battle ends when Altaria gets disintegrated by that Stone Edge? It's pretty satisfying to watch. Finally, this was a trainer battle versus a character who is seemingly a palette swap of a certain trainer design you might have seen in the art earlier. Yep, this seems to be a new design for the Hex Maniac, although it's hard to tell if this blurry mess of pixels is going to be a variation of the Hex Maniac or a new trainer class that is a palette swap of the same outfit or something else. In this quick clip of a Mega Charizard vs Pidgeot, aside from the Outrage animation looking very cool, all there really is to note is that the trainer also has a Victory Bell, Furfrou, Clawitzer, Sylveon, and Chandelure by the low 50s. And then in this Mega Kangaskhan clip, you can see that the trainer also has Talonflame, Florges, Goodra, Umbreon, and Crocodile, also by the low 50s. None of these Pokemon selections are really anything surprising and new, but Anyways, this is interesting. The AoE effect of Bulldoze also KOs 2 Trubbish that don't even seem to have been participating in the battle at all, which is pretty neat collateral damage there. That could be a fun and satisfying way to catch a bunch of Pokemon at once, depending on how long that post-KO grace period lasts. This is cute, a Swirlix hanging around outside of a pastry stall that has a Swirlix for a mascot. In the background you can see a rising star. This shot, with Gyarados and other stuff, is reminiscent of this moment in the reveal trailer. It's exactly here on the map. Notice the blue and yellow roofs in the background. Now this is neat. This is apparently Looker's office from the post-game of X and Y, meaning he might appear in person for the first time in however many games. We see a single Zygarde cell worming its way along a roof, looking very distinctly transparent, which is cool. It's hard to say for sure if this is going to just be a cutscene thing, or if you can collect them out in the overworld like in Sun and Moon. Then finally, we see the protagonist hanging out on a neat little rooftop patio area of Hotel Z before the reveal of the game's release date in late 2025. Apparently, in Japan, they were more specific about it being a fall 2025 release, so we can assume it's just going to release at the normal time for a Pokemon game. Finally, in this last little stinger scene, the protagonist is asleep in bed in Hotel Z before the light outside turns red with an electric sound, which is maybe Prism Tower lighting up. Their Rotom phone alerts them to a promotion match, which, in Japanese, apparently uses wording that specifically refers to some kind of rank-up match. And the logo that comes on screen here could be for some kind of Lumiose-centric battle organization. Clearly all of this is going to serve a role in the game, but it's hard to say exactly what it's telling us just yet, aside from there's going to be battles in the game. I mean, that's nice. Legends Arceus didn't have much of those. That's it for the footage, but there's a couple more miscellaneous things we can point out from that map art. Here in the top left, we can get a better look at the Ace Trainer design alongside this very good Houndoom. In the lower left, we get a shot of Lumiose Museum with this person standing outside who seems to be a painter, but she doesn't look anything at all like the female painter design from X and Y originally, so she might be a complete redesign of that trainer class, which is interesting. For the Lumiose Museum itself, you can find it on the map right around here where it was originally. And very nearby it, there's Hotel Richisme. This big mansion-like building lines up with the original location of Trevor's house from X and Y, although it's hard to say if that means there's a connection there. This looks to be the original Lumiose train station, which might or might not still be operational. And down here near the bottom, this might be the Sycamore Pokémon Lab, although it's moved very slightly from its original position. Aside from that, there's not too much else to note. All of the other buildings we notice that stand out from the crowd seem to be new additions. So, there you have it. Now it's time to return to the present and see what's up with that second trailer. Luckily for us, very little of our first analysis was invalidated by it, although it is pretty funny to see how on the money we were with certain things. Despite revealing less than the first trailer did, there's still some intriguing things you might not have noticed on a casual watch, so let's get started. In this opening montage, there isn't too much going on, but some of the environments are new, and they seem like interesting places to battle. We see this Meowstic fighting inside a building full of cardboard boxes, and this Mega Kangaskhan inside a very fancy-looking building. It's not a big surprise for a game centered entirely around one city, but clearly we can take this as soft confirmation that Legend ZA will have you going indoors at least occasionally, seeing new areas that the Lumiose map won't prepare you for. Aside from specific buildings, we can probably also expect to go into the sewers, and perhaps even a unique area based on the famous Paris catacombs that could fill in this game's cave and haunted biomes simultaneously. As we start the trailer proper, we see the protagonist running past some outdoor vendors with a very specific view of Prism Tower. This shot seems to take place right around here, just behind that Gyarados shot we pointed out in the previous trailer. Here we get a much closer look at that double jump animation, which proves that we were correct in our analysis of it, but also means there wasn't much point to doing that whole dramatic zoom in, so whoops. This clip takes place right here on the map based on the proximity to Prism Tower, the appearance of the grass on the lower roof, and the angle that we can see this building from. We're pretty sure it's the same as this building on the map, even if the details aren't identical. Seeing this completely different shot of the protagonist sitting outside a cafe with their starter suggests to us that this really is something you can do in gameplay, as we kinda suspected in our first analysis. We can see some kind of autumnal-looking trees in this shot, as well as a few more times later in the trailer. We don't expect Unova-style seasons to appear in the game, so if we had to guess, the northeastern parts of Lumiose probably just look like this all the time, referencing their proximity to the autumn-themed routes in Kalos. We get a better look here at one of those construction areas we pointed out in the first trailer, and it seems like our guess that it does indicate construction was accurate. Seeing these areas under construction could easily just be cosmetic, permanent for the duration of the game's story, but it could also be cool if more of them are completed as the game progresses. That might be a little far-fetched though. Here we see the unsurprising confirmation that the elemental monkeys are indeed returning, which you could have guessed already, but these things are great so it's nice to see them. With this trailer, it's now confirmed that all 1025 Pokémon in history will be usable in at least one main series game on the Nintendo Switch. To be clear, we should expect a ton of the Pokémon who were obtainable in X and Y to reappear in this game, so that's why we don't usually draw special attention to a returning Pokémon that was already in the Kalos Pokédex. Anyways, this is right outside the Pokémon Center closest to the train station where you start the game. This sequence of clips has very little to note except for some cool NPC designs, some of which we've seen before. Is it weird that the NPCs are one of the things that stood out to us about this game? This section confirms that our eyes weren't playing tricks on us in our first analysis. Wild Zone 2, in the former plaza near Prism Tower, looks this large on the minimap, while Wild Zone 8, where we saw that Sandile and Croc Rock in the first trailer, is a much smaller circular area. So, while we still can't seem to find an exact match on the map, it looks like we were right to say that this wasn't one of the 5 big plaza areas. The narration here, and its corresponding footage, seem to suggest that wild Pokémon can be found and caught as normal outside of Wild Zones as well, which is interesting because it brings up the question of what exactly makes the Wild Zone special besides the concentration of Pokémon. This shot, as the trailer transitions to nighttime, takes place right here and confirms that we were right about the location of that earlier shot. The roof of this distinctive mall-like building becomes part of this special red area at night, as you can see. This is a battle zone, one of the areas where the free-for-all tournament known as the ZA Royale takes place. The updated website gives us the most detail on the mechanics of this tournament, so we'll be using it to supplement our explanations as we continue through the trailer. First things first, it seems like the first battle zone the player is expected to fight in appears right here, directly in between Wild Zone 2 and Prism Tower. Comparing the minimap to the mega map, its borders seem to be like this. We see plenty of other battle zone locations show up throughout the trailer, which we're mostly going to skim over instead of locating on the map, but the website does interestingly phrase it by saying that a battle zone appears at night. Maybe only one battle zone activates per night, with which one it is depending on either where you are in the city or how far you've progressed through the ranks. When a trainer is close to spotting you, a gauge appears at the top of the screen, and when it fills up, they start a battle. According to the website, this might surprise your Pokemon and make them unable to move at first, but it doesn't seem like this always happens when a trainer spots you. On the other hand, if you approach a trainer from behind and make the first move, you'll get a surprise attack that always lands a critical hit, and you'll start the battle with the advantage. Our guess is that the initiating trainer has to strike specifically from behind to trigger these advantage states, whereas if both trainers are facing each other, the battle just starts as normal. Mareep, Bellsprout, and possibly Honedge are all shifted earlier in the game compared to when you could get them in X and Y, but aside from that, these are pretty unremarkable teams. As the website informs us, some of the trainers you'll encounter, such as this Rank X Emily here, will be stronger than you're expected to be able to defeat, so choosing your battles carefully will be important in this game, and if you do get spotted, running away is a valid strategy. This is the first Pokemon game to let you run away from trainer battles, and it makes sense that it would be this game, if any, considering the free-for-all Battle Royale story scenario. Likewise, attacking a trainer's Pokemon from behind before they've even seen you would make the player seem like kind of a cheater in most games, but in this case it's clearly just part of the rules in the ZA Royale. Oh, one more note here. When the Lucario player makes this surprise attack, their Mega Evolution gauge was empty beforehand, but just commanding Lucario to make a move gives them back 1/8 of the gauge before the surprise attack even lands. Based on this, we can assume that your Mega Gauge is something you can only refill actively rather than passively, usually by fighting battles and just generally playing well. Healing at a Pokemon Center might still automatically refill you, but it might not. It doesn't seem like there's that much to talk about in this clip with Diggersby at first, with even the player's team being pretty standard once again, but it does confirm one thing we were wondering about. Look at Diggersby's moves. 3 of them, Quick Attack, Mudshot, and Brutal Swing, all have that same circle with a plus icon that we only saw on Mega Evolved Pokemon in the first trailer. We speculated that this might be a permanent upgraded state for your moves, like the Move Mastery mechanic from Legends Arceus, and seeing it on only 3 out of 4 moves, and on a non-Mega Pokemon at that, seems to have confirmed it. Time will tell what exactly this upgrade entails. By the way, we think this is the lowest leveled party that we've seen in a shot where the Mega Evolution gauge is visible. In this clip with Mega Alakazam, interestingly, Alakazam's status moves are upgraded as well, so clearly it doesn't just indicate a simple power boost. We have to assume that the icon for it means something, right? Well, we did just notice that the filled part of that circle seems to be about the same percentage of the circle as the Mega Evolution gauge, and that plus is an extremely similar shade of pink. So now we have a couple of guesses. Maybe using a move only refills the Mega Gauge if it's been upgraded in this manner, maybe it's an upgrade for how much of the gauge it refills, or maybe these upgraded moves get powered up somehow when Mega Evolved, like with a lower cooldown or something. Of course, that last one being true would require there to be a Mega Diggersby in the game, which we're not outright expecting, but it certainly doesn't seem impossible either. In the ZA Royale, the player will, of course, go from rank Z to rank A, with every rank up requiring you to win in a promotion match. We assume that each of these 26 battles is a preset match against a specific opponent who's made to be a bit tougher than non-mandatory trainers in the same rank, so that, for instance, Zack here is the boss of the Z-rank trainers. We're guessing that story-relevant fights more comparable to gym leaders will be distributed somewhat evenly among the ranks, so that after every few promotion matches, they'll give you a fight that's a bit more interesting than Zack the Taxi Guy. By the way, did you notice his name starts with a Z, and the very next trainer they show is named Yvonne, starting with a Y? We wouldn't be surprised if every promotion match is against somebody whose name starts with the same letter as their rank. Speaking of names, check out the protagonist's name. Between the trailer and website, we now know that the canon names for the masculine and feminine player characters are Paxton and Harmony respectively. Pax means peace in Latin, so once again, the name theme is pretty obvious. Exclusively on the website, they reveal how you earn these promotion matches, by spending a challenger's ticket, which itself needs to be earned by filling up your ticket points, which we'll call TP because it's catchier. Winning trainer battles in battle zones gets you TP, but the fastest way to fill the bar is by picking up bonus cards off the ground and fulfilling the challenges written on them. You can hold up to 3 at a time, it seems, and it looks like the challenges they offer can be pretty varied, so they should be a good way to keep progression from getting stale, especially because the possible challenges they offer probably change as the game progresses. Quickly rewinding a bit, that trainer with the Florges from earlier is actually rank D, pretty close to the top despite her Pokemon only being level 44. Based on the sheer number of ticket points needed at this stage, each rank probably gets slower to complete towards the end of the game, but this still suggests a level curve where you'll be in the end game by the time you reach the 50s or so, which is unfortunate for certain Pokemon if so, but we'll see. We don't even know anything about what the end game is going to entail. So, why are so many people fighting to come out on top in this battle royale, including both the player and Urbane/Tawny? Aside from being crowned as the strongest trainer in Lumiose, whoever reaches the top is granted one wish by the city, as we see with Zach's incredibly unhinged taxi dream here. Presumably, you only get a realistic wish rather than a supernatural one, but it's still an interesting setup for the plot. We assume this is going to play into the game's theming to some degree, rather than just being a reason to get you fighting everyone, but only time will tell. All in all, it's a very cool setup this game seems to follow with a lot of potential. The website goes into more detail on the gameplay loop. During the day, you'll explore, look for Pokemon, catch them, and train them. They also suggest buying items to prepare, and this screenshot confirms that Pokemon Centers also service the game's main shops. You can even see the nurse blurred behind the UI here. During the night, you compete in battle zones to rise the ranks. There seems to be an honest-to-goodness element of time management in this game, even if it doesn't come with any missable content. Earlier clips reinforce this. Around the minimap, you can see a sun or moon icon on top showing which phase you're in, while a circular bar surrounds the map and appears to either drain or fill up as time passes. We haven't noticed it visibly moving in any one clip, but you can see this clock in very different positions in different shots, so we can assume that the time of day does update in real time, possibly remaining in each phase for quite a while before it ends. So that's all the new information we get for now. The trailer has an outro with a few more things we could note, such as this great animation for either Brave Bird or Sky Attack, and that cute side-eye from Talonflame, the additional Zygarde appearance reminding you of its importance in this game, and finally this shot of the player and Lucario reacting to something glowing pink off-camera. They're standing on a rooftop and looking straight ahead rather than up, so at the very least we assume they're not looking at some kind of crazy giant legendary or whatever. It's presumably something newly introduced in this game, which might serve a similar role to either Nobles or Alphas from Legends Arceus, or it might be completely new and unique. For now, we're done here. Putting all this together was a lot of work, and we can't promise we'll actually want to keep doing this for future trailers, but we hope you enjoyed, and we hope that you're as excited as we are to learn more. We're hoping to upload to this channel more frequently moving forward, as we've got a lot more plans for future videos. So if watching more excessively thorough videos about mostly Pokemon sounds like your idea of a good time, feel free to subscribe if you'd like. Let us know if you've spotted anything interesting we've overlooked in our analysis, but until next time, thank you for watching! And then in this Mega Kangaskhan vs Garbodor clip, and then in this clip of Mega Kangaskhan clip,